Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first of three classes in May regarding the NAR settlement and how to navigate your real estate career post-NAR settlement. Uh, I'm hoping you realize it's here to stay, and there are some tweaks you need to make, maybe major tweaks to the way you do real estate. And so we're going to be talking about that. We've already reviewed the NAR settlement itself. And a couple of weeks ago, I gave you some talking points on when you have conversations with your sphere, your friends, your neighbors, about how to address some of the questions that the public is raising due to the NAR settlement. Today, I want to focus on uh, working with buyers in the post-NAR settlement world. It's, as you all know, it's going to be mandatory that you sign a buyer to a buyer representation agreement. So you're going to have to do more than simply show up to open a door for them. And in fact, that's sort of the theme of today's class. Uh, that's been our problem as an industry, and what led to these lawsuits is uh, partially what led to these lawsuits is buyers did not really understand the value of a real estate agent, especially when it comes to a buyer's agent. And I'm going to talk to you about that today, talk about that to you today. So let me jump right into the presentation. Hopefully it'll go fairly quick. There's a lot of quick points I'm going to make and save a little bit of time for some Q&A at the end. So let me share my screen. And I am hitting the right buttons here. Right. Okay. Uh, there we go. All right. As always, here are my contact information. I think all of you have it by now, so I won't spend much time there. Email me, call me, of course. And weekends or evenings, text my cell. I'm always happy to help. If you're working, I make it a point to try and be available. So these are the ways to reach out to me at any time, any questions you have. Let's talk about today's subject matter. It's going to be the value proposition statement. What is your value to your client? And some of this material is generic to both buyers and sellers. A lot of this material is going to be focused on the buyer side of your marketing, and you can adapt this a little bit. Adapt this a little bit to the seller side, and one-on-one, I'm happy to help you with that. I'm probably going to do another class, go a little deeper into this with more dialogue and more marketing ideas. Our marketing department, as Stephanie, has been in communication with me, and she is also going to help you present your value to the public by way of social media and with not only a focus on buyers, but certainly being cognizant of the fact that now we're going to have to do more than simply offer them a house to look at. So let's take a look at that. So we don't know the future yet. It's getting more and more defined. The settlement has been approved by the judge. It will go into effect later this year. It might be tweaked with the DOJ, but maybe not much because it has most of what the DOJ has asked for. So what we do know is that value wins. So always in real estate, much of this isn't new. We're being forced to look at this a little closer, especially when it comes to buyers, on recognizing that the reason we exist as an industry, the reason anything exists in the marketplace is because it brings value to the consumer. So to the extent that you can demonstrate value, you will always win. You're going to see, I'm going to give you a couple of slides here. People will pay for value. There's a lot of real estate marketing and advertising directed at home sellers and buyers in the media. And so what is that impact? Well, people know a lot of real estate agents as a result of that. They're getting to know agents more and more because agents are marketing to them, posting, mailing, emailing, drip campaigns There's no lack of contact rather, between real estate agents and consumers. It's happening a lot. However, customer defection is always a call, a text, or an email away. So because your clients, your sphere is being pinged on by so many other agents, a defection is just around the corner unless you take measures to prevent that. 74.5% of consumers surveyed said that they received some or a lot of real estate marketing and advertising. And of that 74%, nearly 3/4 of the people that were surveyed, that 3/4, 63% of them said that the marketing and advertising was in some way useful. The real estate agent sending stuff to the public is reviewing it. And here's an interest, 37% said it was not, obviously. Here's an interesting side stat with that, 74%. 69% of the agents surveyed could recall the name of the person marketing to them. What does that tell you? That tells you it's happening more than once. You send one email to your database, and that's the last one you send. They're not going to know you from Adam. You send one every 2 or 3 weeks and do that for 3 months, they're going to know your name. Nearly 70% of the 75% of people who said they get a lot of material could tell you who's sending it to them. So you've got a lot of competition out there. 31%, of course, could not. Buying or selling a home is a high-stake transaction. It requires the skills of a professional real estate agent, not telling you anything you don't know. Here's an interesting stat. These are sort of rounded off numbers. There are 19,000 licensed real estate agents in San Diego County. I didn't put county there. In the past year, 9,120 either did not sell a home or sold only one home. Those of you that are active in real estate, and that's probably everybody on this call, can see the problem therein. There are a lot of agents out there, talking to clients, talking to your clients. A huge percentage of them, 49% nearly, have not done any business to speak of. So how much do they really know? Who a buyer chooses to represent them matters. In a survey of recent buyers, over half of the buyers had no idea or only a vague idea of how their agent got paid. They're getting a lot of stuff from agents. They're getting a lot of promotional stuff. But even within transactions, the consumer, the buyer, does not understand how you were paid in the past. To succeed, you're going to have to be able to explain how you're paid or expect to be paid. That's going to be an absolute must. You never had to do that in the past. It was sort of automatic. The seller took care of it. Going forward, that's going to be your responsibility if you, in fact, are going to sign a buyer to a buyer representation agreement. In a recent survey, sellers were asked after the transaction was completed. This is one of maybe the first slides you want to pay attention to in a big way. I mean, pay attention to all of them, but here's something you should really focus on. If you were buying or selling again, would you consider a discount broker? 31%, nearly a third of buyers and sellers who have completed a transaction said yes. That's some of your clients. No one on this call is a discount broker. So that meant they would definitely consider not using you again. It doesn't get a whole lot better. 49% said maybe. That is 80% of the buyers and sellers who completed a transaction would consider next time hiring, a discount broker, someone who's driven by commission only, to do their next transaction. 12% said no, they wouldn't. That's nice. 8% said definitely no. So, we don't take any security in the 20%. Be a little bit alarmed by the 80%, but again, I'm not here to preach doom and gloom. I'm here to get your attention. This can be fixed. You can do something about that. And this is what I'm hoping you'll get the beginning of some insight. We're going to do some additional classes. Mike's going to do some classes, and we're going to be able to address the fact that 80% of your prospective buyers and sellers are definitely open to using someone other than you for no other reason than to save the commission. Would a buyer or seller pay a reasonable commission? Okay, so what that past survey that tells us people are looking for the cheapest price. Well, yes, maybe no. Would a buyer or seller pay 2.5% for a full service agent if they understood what those services were? The answer, yes. Here's a survey to sort of put some truth to that fact. In a recent survey, consumers were given the following scenario. These are surveys of buyers and sellers who have completed transactions. You list your home for $500,000. Your real estate agent helps you prepare the home for the market, places your home in the MLS, also places your home on websites, including Zillow, handles negotiates the offer and handles the escrow. Your home sold for the price you wanted. Your agent spent a total of 40 hours marketing and in the sale of your home. By the way, statistically, buyers agents spend on average 81 hours. So this is even better for you. For those of you, maybe you want to spend a few less hours with those buyers. Listing agents do tend to spend less time on their transactions than buyers agents do. So your agent spent, this is what the survey people were told, your agent spent 40 hours. Your agent's commission was $12,500, that 2.5%, works out to $312 an hour. That is not a bad hourly pay. It's a good bit more than I make, and I'm real happy. I'm not complaining. Those of you who are making $300 an hour, good for you. Does your client appreciate that? Do they support that? Would they agree to pay you that? The consumers were asked, do you think your agent got paid too much in this scenario? 27%, a little bit shy of a third. No, not at all. Even 45%. No, not really. So what does that tell you? That tells you 72% think that you deserve the money you make. 22% said probably you were overpaid. 5%, yeah, you were definitely overpaid. So, sure enough, just shy of a third, they think you're getting too much money. 2/3 had no problem with that. 72.5% of consumers believe a real estate agent earns and deserves what they are paid if or when the consumer understands all the things a real estate agent does to earn their commission. There's your first message. Does your client really know what you do? We've done a few things as an industry. I go on a soapbox here. I don't want to go off on a tangent. I want to get through this material. I have time for questions. But one of the things we've done is convince our buyers and our sellers inadvertently that it's no problem. We'll take care of everything. Don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. I'll take care of it. I'll do it. And we do that in the name of service. And that has hurt us because our clients don't realize some of the nightmares some of you have gone through to close a transaction. Here's what I'm suggesting. Let them know there's a problem. Let them know you're on top of it. I used a lender almost exclusively when I listed and sold. When I got out of listing and selling, he was heartbroken because he said a third of his business came from me and the people that I referred him to, other agents and that. And one of the things that I loved about him is he would let me know every time there was a hiccup in the loan application process. But he said to me, oh, we got a problem, Walt. The VA is doing X, Y, Z, and we sent the stuff to them. They can't find it. Then he showed his value. So I'm driving up to the VA tomorrow morning. I'll be on their doorstep when they open. I'll get that document in their hand. So I knew he was working hard for what he was doing, but he didn't say, leave that problem on my plate. He took care of it. So when our consumers understand what we do, they don't have a problem paying us. Consumers respond positively to detailed explanation of your compensation, what you do to earn it, why you are entitled to the money you are charging. Clearly, agents must make a better value proposition statement to buyers. So let's look a little bit at a value proposition statement. I'm going to go back to some surveys in a minute, give you even a second insight if I can. All right, so what will people pay for? People will pay money for two things: to avoid a problem or to feel good, get a gain. So if they gain, they'll pay money. If they can solve a problem, they'll pay money. By the way, solving the problem is far more powerful than the gain. You'll see that, I think, in a future slide here. Now, we sometimes focus on, price when we talk to our clients. We have clients who will always make a purchase decision based on lowest price. Study after study has said 15% of the public is going to select based on price, period. And 15% of them will pick the lowest price. Interestingly enough, 5% will pick the highest price. Not to get personal, my wife tends to be in the lowest price category. If it's cheap, she'll buy it, maybe. Walt's in the higher side. If it's expensive, it must be good. I'll pay more. So I'm inclined to pay more. My wife's inclined to pay less. We fit in these two categories. I think we both actually fit in the third category. 80% will pay for value. That last survey sort of demonstrated that if they understood your value, they would pay you. Why do they fight you? They're not in the 15%. See, we make a mistake. We think people who fight us, we don't realize they're in the 80%. And they're fighting us. Oh, they don't want to pay a full commission. No, that may not be the case. What may be the case is they don't understand the value of a full commission. And absent the value, buyer decision, absent the value, well, out of sequence a little bit. Absent a buyer at value, the buyer is going to select on price. They make the decisions based on value. Value, the relationship between price and quality. The customer's goal is to get the most value for their money. This term for your price-value relationship is your value proposition. Most agents provide more value than they receive in payment. It's not a tit for tat. It's not an even trade. You will lose if it's an even trade. You've got to provide more value in their mind than what you're paid for. And if you do that, you will never lack succeeding in real estate. It's important to differentiate yourself. The public believes all real estate agents are the same. So therefore, no one agent has any more value than the other agent. See, when the quality of service is the same, this was the point I was sort of alluding to, they're going to make the decision on price. If you are competing with another agent who's charging less commission and you're struggling, it's because you have not yet successfully, not saying you aren't trying, but you're not successfully differentiating yourself from that agent and demonstrating why you are more value. There's a reason people shop at Nordstrom's or Brooks Brothers or Neiman Marcus, and it's not because they love paying the highest price, although my wife says that's me. It's because they like the value. And so they've done very well at positioning themselves. Their value proposition is you're going to get more value when you shop with us. If you want to earn more business, earn higher commissions, you've got to provide more value, demonstrate that you provide more value than other real estate agents. You have to demonstrate that. You have to be able to explain that. And I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on how to do that. This is just sort of opening the door. We will do future classes on fleshing this out a bit and helping you demonstrate your value to your clients. You've got to differentiate yourself from your competition. How are you different? Your value proposition, what you must offer is provide value to the client and be different from other agents. If you're the same as the other agent, then whoever has the lowest price is going to be the one that prevails. So those two go together. and it has to be relevant to the client. And that's maybe another key takeaway. I'm going to show you some interesting things here. At least it was interesting to me. I think you'll find it interesting about relevancy. I think as an industry, we haven't appreciated how to be relevant to our buyers. And I'll see what I mean in a minute. Relevance is important in two ways. Need. Does the client need what you offer? Think about that. We'll come back to this thought when I go through this a little further, because we are busy, many of us, marketing what the client doesn't really need from us. We are placing value on what the client doesn't need from us. I'm not saying they don't need it. They just don't need it in your offer. And so they'll get it from someone who charges less. Does the client want what you offer? And here's the good news. I'm going to give you some insight on what the client, especially buyers, really want. And if you begin to tweak your marketing, your conversations in that direction, you're going to have more success. To craft an effective value proposition statement, you have to know what the client's looking for. Just saying things, I'm number one. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That's not going to get you anywhere. Why? Because no client is looking for the number one agent. As much as our industry likes to say that, they're not looking for who's number one. What they do is sometimes equate your value with the fact you're number one. Success follows a pattern. So if you've been successful in the past, you'll be successful in the future. We sometimes lean into that a little too much. You'll see what I mean going forward here. What does the customer value? And sometimes we have a false sense of what the customer values. I'm going to help you with that. Right now, there's a lot of noise in the media regarding the value of a real estate agent, right? A buyer's agent in particular. A buyer's agent must build value beyond what it ever was in the past. We've got to convince the public, if they're going to sign agreements with us, that we provide value greater than what we're asking for in the agreement. What's your value proposition to the buyer? And how do you present it? How do you market it to buyers? That's the question you want to think about. That's what I'm going to begin to answer for you here today. How do you articulate your value to the buyer? Frame your value as a buyer's agent in terms of what the buyer values today. Again, I should underline that. What does the buyer value today? By the way, it's not a list of houses. It's not, I'll put you on a drip system so every time a new listing comes on the market, you'll get notified. You're going to see in a future slide, that's important. I'm not saying you can't do that. But if you are selling that, leading that, thinking that's why people are going to sign up with you, that's why you're going to struggle in this post-NAR world. But don't worry, I got some data that's going to help you. We're going to come to the rescue for you. Wayne Gretzky, one of the greatest hockey players of all time, famous for this quote. He succeeds because he skates to where the puck is going to be. See, most hockey players skate to where the puck is. You watch hockey at all, you'll see it. Wherever the puck is, that's where everybody's going. If you lost the puck, because the puck's kind of hard to see on TV and in the stands, you lose that puck, you can figure out where it is real quick. That's how the camera people follow it pretty quick because everybody's skating to it. Wayne Gretzky is famous for, he goes to where the puck is going to be. He's positioned to where someone's going to feed him the puck. The puck's not there yet. But he goes to a place where the puck isn't, but it's going to be there. And he's the number one scorer, at least he used to be. I don't follow hockey as much today as I used to, but he was the number one scorer in all time. Why? Because he goes to where the puck is going to be. We need to do the same with our clients. We need to go where our clients are going to be. And I don't mean like marketplace physically. I mean the value we provide. What does the client not only need from us, but going to need from us? And therein is a real key to marketing yourself. It's never a bad idea to understand your customer and what they value and how to articulate that. So you're going to want to spend some time working on that. This class is just an introduction. There's a lot more material available to you. We'll provide you more material, but know what your customer values and think of ways you can present that to your client. Going to give you just a slight overview now. Your value proposition. There have been recent surveys of buyers nationwide. What do customers know and not know? And what do customers value and not value? What do our buyers know? More importantly, and those of you who work with buyers, there's a lot they don't know. What do customers value and not value? You might be surprised what buyer consumers value far more than any other thing regarding buyer agent services. It's a vacuum that exists between what the customer knows regarding what a good agent does and what a bad agent might not do. See, a lot of times, and some of you know that, you're frustrated because, even when we were on the other side and their agents, lack of a better word, an idiot, maybe that's not politically correct, but you know what I mean. The other side, the agent doesn't know what the heck they're doing. And you're sort of amazed. And what we know, we have to practice good ethics. But what we know, those of us who've been involved and I get involved in a lot of transactions where the other side doesn't know what they're doing. That's why you got a problem. That's why you called me. Buyers don't know, even sellers for that matter. The client doesn't know the difference between what a good agent is and what a bad agent is. That's often the case. Our customers don't understand the value of a good agent. That's on us. That's on us because we haven't promoted that, not to the extent we should. And now going forward to the extent you're going to have to. Survey of 1,000 homeowners who bought a home in the last 3 years. Half had no knowledge of how their agent got paid. Half. No idea how you got paid. As buyer's agents, we've never had to explain how we're paid. Buyers felt good about the transaction. That's a fact. But had no understanding of the economics of the transaction, how their agent got paid, and did not understand what their agent did or did not do for them. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he showed me the house. Oh, yeah. He met the inspector. Yeah, he helped me with the repair request. But they don't know all the research you went into. They don't know, if you're doing it right, the recommendations you're making and why you're making them, all of the things you do, they're not aware of that. If you don't tell your story, someone else will. Right now, buyer's agent stories are being told by everyone but the agent. I'm going to suggest to you to start telling your own story. And this is from a marketing perspective. How do you convince a buyer to work with you? In a survey of buyers who've recently purchased a home, if there's one slide you take a picture of, this content, by the way, Lindsay once again has done incredible help in getting this ready for me. She types all this up. I just cut and paste it. I do collect it and write it, but she types it for me, organizes it, and so we're going to put this on Agent Hub as well. So you'll have this. This one slide is something you want to burn into your brain. What is the buyer's number one concern when they buy a house? Risk mitigation. Survey after survey has said the buyer is most worried about risk involved in the purchase of that home. Do you see how your value might be? I'm going to help you avoid making a risky decision. Buyers are nervous about the risks with buying a home. They don't know what they don't know. They hire an agent and value them most for mitigating their risk. That's what buyers agents value. And right now, we're starting to get a clue here. But in the past, we haven't really marketed buyers that way. Think about how, maybe not you, but how most of the industry markets to buyers. Oh, I've got all the inventory. I've got a website. Click on here. I'll show you homes. It's all inventory driven. As a buyer's agent, think about what you do to mitigate a buyer's risk in the purchase. That's what you really want to focus on as you develop your value to your buyers. Think of all the things you do to protect buyers, to help buyers. You review, or you should, by the way, this list is, by the way, a best practices list. Isn't this interesting? This thought couldn't help but occur to me. And maybe it's because it's near and dear to me. My function, of course, is to, help you with risk mitigation as an agent, right? I solve problems. I do training. I give you, best practices, all focused on how not to get sued, what to do to keep your commission. As it turns out, that's an excellent selling tool, risk mitigation. So reviewing seller disclosures, recommending and reviewing inspections. See, it's the reviewing, it's the recommending. This is what buyers need. I've talked to many of you. Got to go through those inspection reports. Think of this. You're at a house. You're showing a house. You're showing the house. The buyer gives you some buying signals. We all know what they are. And so they're ready to write an offer. And they write an offer. And then you say to them, by the way, that house, that roof, looked like it was toward the end of its life. We're going to have the physical inspection look at that. We may want to get a roof inspection. See, that is the way you're going to demonstrate your value, not after the inspector says, oh, get a roof inspection, and you don't even point it out, and then the buyer doesn't even read it, and then they close escrow and their house leaks, their roof leaks. See the difference? You bring value when you are the proactive person. Couldn't help but notice that roof looks like it's kind of weathered. You might want to consider an inspection. See, some of us are so concerned about losing the deal that we inadvertently lose the client, lose the ability for our client to say, you were fantastic. You were worth every nickel that you were paid. Why? Because I didn't make a mistake buying this house. That may not be dialogue, but that's an attitude. Recommending vendors. Take that seriously. Just a quick little side note, some of you worry about it. Don't recommend a vendor who's been sued, lost their license, isn't licensed, is a crook. You will be sued for that. But you sue a licensed, reputable plumber that doesn't have a list of one-star reviews an arm long, and that plumber completely screws up the job, you will not lose a lawsuit. I can't say you won't be sued. You probably won't. Walt will get involved immediately, and it's negligent referral that you have to avoid. And negligent referral is you're referring somebody who 3 times you've had problems with, and you still keep referring them. I don't know why, but you do. Hopefully it's not getting a kickback. Maybe it's because you're related. I'm sorry to hear that. But there's nothing wrong with recommending vendors. Especially you want to screen your vendors. We have a list of vendors. I'm not 100% certain every one of them are screened perfectly, but we do know they've all been recommended. That's why they're on Agent Hub. And so before you recommend them, you might check these vendors. But that's the kind of thing that we can do to help a buyer mitigate their risks. Understanding the laws and regulations that affect the buyer. Providing information about the neighborhood. This is just a quick little list I put together. And you could come up with a huge list of all the things you do to help a buyer minimize their risk in purchasing a home. Why would you do that? Because that's what buyers value. That's what you want to incorporate into your early conversations with buyers, especially maybe before they signed an agreement with you. Here are the things I'm going to do for you to be sure you get the home you want, and more importantly, want the home you get. As a buyer's agent, think about the buyer's emotional state in this purchase. Think about this. For most buyers, this is major. It's probably the most expensive thing they have ever bought. Once it closes, it can't be reversed. I mean, it can be reversed maybe if there's a clerical error, but we're not talking about that. The only way to reverse it is to resell it. And most buyers don't want to buy a home only to turn around and have to resell it. So they look at that as a final situation. And that's kind of scary. They don't want to make a mistake. It's their core concern. Study after study conducted today by entities that I have a high respect for, by the way. So does everybody else. That's what buyers are looking for agents to make sure that they are happy with their purchase after it closes. Buyers believe they don't need a real estate agent to help them find a home. This, I'm probably not telling anything you haven't figured out. This has been the problem with our industry leading up to maybe the last couple of years. We have marketed ourselves from the prospect, from the angle rather, of we'll find you your perfect home. That's not really what buyers are looking for. Buyers give little value to that service. I have the internet. I can go to open houses. I don't need you to open doors. I've seen on more than one media that the buyers are talking about they paid their agent too much because all they did is open doors for them. Well, I would say if they had a transaction with that agent, he wasn't a very good agent, that's for sure. And if we're marketing with that sort of concept, yeah, we're going to lose. They don't need us to do that anymore. That started to go away when the MLS went public, but it's we were over the years, we're slow to let that go. When I got into real estate, public couldn't even know if a house was on the market unless they saw a sign or an ad in the paper. They had zero access to the inventory like the MLS. Of course, now they have access to all of the inventory. So keep in mind that public doesn't value that anymore. Now, I'm not saying you just forget it, and you might tweak what you do a little bit. Dialogue might be, there's plenty of homes on the internet. I know you have access to all that. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to help you find some homes that aren't on the market yet. We've got a program in our company where we can alert you to a home that's going to come on the market. Nobody else is going to know about that. See, so I'm not saying you can't utilize finding a home. It's just not your principal value. What do buyers believe they need and give value to? Helping them avoid making a mistake. That's the new buyer that we have to market to and answer their concerns if they're going to hire us to be their agent. Your marketing focus, the number one value proposition should be helping the buyer not make a wrong decision. Help the buyer avoid risk. See, human nature is wired to avoid risk, to avoid loss. We will do more to avoid loss than we will to get gain. Tell somebody, fear of loss greater motivator than opportunity gain. Tell somebody what they'll gain by doing something and they'll do it, maybe. Tell somebody what they'll lose if they don't do it, and they'll do it now. So you got to sort of keep that in mind. Now we've got to focus on marketing to help the buyer not lose in this transaction, because that's what they're worried about. It's not about the buyer getting the best possible terms. That's another thing that we've led with. I'll negotiate the best offer possible. I can tell you, buyers don't necessarily, think that's a unique value. I mean, it's certainly important. I'm not saying, and you can certainly talk about your negotiating skills. Goodness knows I talk about mine. But that's not the lead that buyers are looking for. Oh, I need to hire a good negotiator. Yeah, I want to hire you because I'm hopeful you can negotiate the best outcome when it comes to price. Comes to repair requests. It's about the buyer not getting the worst possible terms. And that is a house they regret purchasing. Buyers do value negotiation, just don't lead with it. The number one thing buyers value is risk management. That's what you lead with, not making the wrong choice. Don't want to buy a money pit, don't want to live with regret, don't want to imperil themselves financially. They want their real estate agent to help them avoid all this. Repeated surveys reveal most buyers were happy with their real estate agent. And that gives us a false sense of security. They were happy. They don't know how you were paid, and they don't realize that they were paying you by price. They were in fact paying you, but they don't realize that. It does not reveal what buyers value most. So these surveys that say, oh, buyers will use you again because, 80% of buyers would use you again if they still knew who you were. That's a great marketing comment about staying in touch with your clients. Don't fault that, but that's not what the client values. Oh, the transaction, yeah, I was happy with my agent. I'm going to hire him again. No, they'll hire a discount agent because they'll be just as happy with one that charges less money, unless you can demonstrate your value. And what is your value? Risk mitigation. 1,000-watt survey. 1,000-watt is a great entity. I was talking to Mike about it. They're a private company that does marketing surveys and assisted marketing. They're highly, highly respected. And I was able to obtain some of the results of some of the surveys they've done. Here's a question they asked. See, NAR asked, were you happy with your agent? And that's a nice thing, but it doesn't tell you a lot. It's sort of like, were you happy with the training program? Yeah, we loved it. Doesn't tell me anything. We used to, I'm a professional trainer. We used to have a survey that said, if there's one thing you would do to change the training, what would you recommend? See, that told us a ton. See, was there ever a point where you question your agent's value? See, that's a much better question than were you happy with your agent? If I could improve, what's the one thing I could do to improve? See, that's a very powerful question. The most common answer, yes. There was a point when I wasn't happy with the value of my agent. It's because I found my own house. My agent didn't find it for me. This leads to the question, what's an agent's value? When as agents, we promote our value to be finding the right house, we're missing the mark. Buyers don't see that value. They can and do find the homes themselves. Therein lies the disconnect. The media proclaims, despite the rise in home search apps and homes being online, realtors are still commanding a high level of compensation, and they're making all kinds of noise. Agents aren't worth what they're being paid. That's the false logic. Because why? They don't talk about all of the problems we solve for the buyer to make sure when the house closes, they're happy with the purchase. They don't talk about that. They talk about they didn't find the house. We don't need them to find the house. They don't deserve that much money. I used to always say, and I mean it more than ever, a good agent's underpaid. Bad agents probably way overpaid. And good and bad in my perspective, and again, I deal with problems. That's I'm the risk management guy. But the value of an agent is helping a client not get into a pickle, or if they get into a pickle, helping the client get out of that pickle. It's not, finding the house anymore. If the buyer is inclined to question the value of their agent, it's due to the fact that the agent didn't find the house for them. And that was the value the agent sold to the buyer. See, the buyer went in believing that you get paid because you open doors. And that's where we're going to lose our clients if we don't change our perspective a little bit. Real estates have had an unhealthy obsession with real estate search engines. It's dominant on our websites. Think about it. The landing page of every website is find your home. Not saying that's bad. In fact, I'm going to tell you in a minute, it's critical. We're not getting rid of that, by the way. Don't panic. Our website's not going to lose that because it is critical. But when you sell that as your value and you lead with that, and you sort of don't even get into, no, my real value is, helping you, be sure that this home is the right home for you. Make sure that there are any risks involved in this purchase. We address them. See, there is where your value lies. We promote search alerts. We seem to be telling our buyers our value is helping you find the home. And that's fine, but as long as you don't make that your featured value. That's what I guess I'm preaching to here. An agent's search functions are not unique. So that's part of the problem. All websites have search functions. The buyer can conduct his own search with any agent or no agent at all. So making that why you need to use an agent is probably not going to be nearly as successful as, how would you feel if you bought a home and 6 months later regretted it? Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going to avoid. I'm going to help you avoid. See, there is where your value lies. Of course, an agent has to promote his or her search functions, absolutely. But the value is principally to us. Think about it. The search functions are really lead capture. That's why we have them. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with telling a buyer, I'm going to help you find a home. I've got a great website. I'm going to put you on the drip campaign. I'm not saying drop that. I'm just saying that's just, the beginning of your value. What you really want to focus on is the core of your value. And it's termed, it's phrased in terms the buyer is looking for. I'll give you some dialogue here in a second. You'll see it. Emphasizing the value of search functions misses what the buyer actually values. See, emphasizing, that's the key word. I mean, you talk about it, but you don't, that's not why they're going to use you. When talking to buyers, here's a little dialogue. Again, you don't need to write this down. Just want you to feel it. It's going to be on Agent Hub here, if not tonight, by tomorrow. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you have apps. You have thousands of websites you can use to find your home. My real job is after you found the home you're interested in, is to help you evaluate that home, to see if it might be the right home for you. And if you feel it might be, I'll negotiate the offer. And most importantly, during the escrow, help you be certain that when this is all over, you're happy with your new home. See, simply stated, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what I will do for you is help you get the home you want. More importantly, be certain you want the home you get. See, that's sort of the dialogue that you want to, put in your own words. That's sort of the point you want to make, in my opinion, anyway. Buyer's agents have not been explaining their value, how they get paid. They have instead relied on the value of search functions and compensation coming from the seller without any involvement on the buyer's part. We're going to have to change that. How should a buyer's agent position their services from a marketing perspective? Buyer's agent should position their services around helping the buyer get it right. Buyers want to be successful at getting the right home. See, more dialogue. Folks, this is a big deal. I used to tell about the buyers all the time when I sold. This is a long time ago. But I told them, this is a big deal, you buying a home. This is not buying a pair of shoes. Look at the wife and smile and say, not buying a dress. There's a lot more involved than that. It's not easy. There's nothing wrong with it. The problem we've had is, we'll make it easy. Don't you worry. We'll cover everything. That's a mistake. Well, if it's easy, then why am I paying you so much money? It's not easy. It's hard. And there are risks. If you tell people that there are risks up front, I think that's powerful. Now you don't say, and good luck. My lender that I talked about, he didn't say, yeah, the VA screwed up. So good luck, Walt. I don't know what. We'll wait. No, he had a solution. I'm going to take care of it for you, Walt. I appreciate it even more. I'm prepared to help you get it right and to avoid a bad outcome. Nothing to do with finding you a house. I'm going to help you do that. Nothing to do with opening the doors. I'll do that for you. It's nothing to do with just filling out paperwork. I'm going to do that for you. Don't worry about that. But that's not the core of what we're here. I'm here to help you have a successful home buying experience. What does that mean? That means avoiding a bad outcome. It's more than just helping you get the home you want. It's helping you be certain when this is all over, you want that home. The home you got is the one you wanted. No surprises, no money pit. See, that is how you should be marketing yourself to buyers, to get them to sign an agreement with you, because that right now, the good news is your competition doesn't have this seminar yet, but I got this from other sources as well. This is not all off the top of my head. Good agents are going to be picking up on this sooner than later. You want to lead the curve. You lead the crowd, rather. If you start looking at it from this perspective, you'll just get better and better and better at it. And you'll always be ahead of your competition. Agents haven't had to have this kind of conversation with their buyers, but going forward, they're going to have this conversation if you're going to be successful with your buyers. How do you demonstrate your value in a loss aversion context? Talk about disclosures and how to make sense of them, what you're going to do, evaluate, read them, sort of that list again. Talk about inspections, reports, and their importance. Talk about local and state ordinance that affect the process. Think about the things the buyer doesn't know that impacts buying the home, and use that as an opportunity to demonstrate your ability to anticipate the things the buyer has no idea could become an issue. Buyer buys a septic system, has no idea what's involved in that. You lead them with, we're going to get an inspection system. We're going to review this. We're going to go over this. We'll talk to the inspector about any issues that he raises. Want to make sure when you flush the toilet, it works, right? Of course. All right. We're going to make sure that's the kind of thing you talk about. Potential wood destroying pests. Talk a little bit about that. Your ability to bring in professionals to evaluate the home and how you can manage that transaction. Tell stories about your buyers and their transactions. See, the average agent gets testimonials, something like this. Oh yeah, Walt was great. That's not powerful. Everyone's a five-star agent. That's good. I'm not knocking it. Love it when our agents are five-star agents and they're to be congratulated. That's not going to lead you above the crowd. The public almost expects a five-star agent. You know, that doesn't distinguish you from everybody else nearly to the extent it used to. Go deeper. Tell the story about the problem the buyer encountered and how you solved it. You know, stories sell, folks. There's not that's an absolute sales fact. Telling a story makes more points to a buyer than a bunch of bullet points, or to a seller. Talk about late disclosures of an insurance claim involving a water leak and what you did to deal with it. You resolved the problem. You still closed on time. You have to craft these stories a little bit. And even once you craft them, make them, sort of brief and to the point. But here's the problem. Here's what it could have done to the transaction. Say this, but what the message is, I came to the rescue. We fixed it. And our client still got their home and it closed on time, and their loan was still, we still were able to use the loan that, was about to expire, whatever. So telling a little story. Get your buyers to tell the story. Think about the problems you've encountered in your last transaction and what you did to solve them. Ask the buyer to tell a story. You might have to script it for them a little bit. You got 5 buyers, 3 will say no, 2 will say yes, 1 will do it very well. That's your new marketing piece, little video, minute and a half. And Walt was great. I remember during the transaction, there was a water leak that wasn't disclosed by the seller. Walt immediately got the insurance company, did paperwork so we could see what was done. He immediately arranged for inspector to come back and take a look at it. We had a second look at it. We found some problems and we negotiated, Walt was helpful there again. See, that's the kind of thing you want. You got a credit from the buyer to fix this. And so that when it closed, that problem was already resolved. That's what's going to help you in your marketing. These stories create a demand for your service with your prospects. They demonstrate your value, justify your costs. Again, stop letting other people, the media, tell your story. Tell your own story and tell your value. All right. Thank you, folks. I hope that made a good point. I hope you got something valuable out of it. And Lindsay, do we have any questions?
That was the best presentation, by the way, Walt.
Oh, thank you, Aiden.
No questions. Dennis just made a comment actually before you even made the point that facts tell and stories sell.
That's exactly right. Don't tell, sell. Yeah, stories sell. Facts don't bunch of bullet points. All right, let me make a couple of comments and then we'll wrap it up. We don't have any questions. In 2 weeks, on the 15th, we're going to do a class, and it's going to be on the BRBC and the related forms. Folks, the BRBC has been completely revised. And so that's going to go into effect in June. So on May 15th, I want to give you a class on that. I'll go through it paragraph by paragraph so you understand it. And we'll be able to put it to good use, be able to use it going forward. You don't need to use it yet. Like I said earlier, the judge gave preliminary approval to the NAR settlement. The NAR settlement does call for NAR members to have a buyer representation agreement with all buyers they work for. CAR, in their wisdom, realized that the significant population of agents are not NAR members. And so NAR requiring us to use a buyer representation agreement could put us back into that situation where the number one objection buyers who tried to use buyer representation agreements would get is the other agent didn't ask me to sign one. Now you should be able to overcome that, but nonetheless, it was a big objection. So, for that reason, and of course, CAR believes it's in the buyer's best interest to have a buyer representation agreement. So does the DRE. The civil code requiring all buyers to have a all buyers agents to have a buyer representation agreement before they work with buyers was slated to go into effect January 1 of 26. It hadn't even been completely written. It is now planned to go in effect not later than January 1 of 2025. There are hearings on it now, and they're getting the legislators getting input from the DRE and from CAR. One of the values of the association, especially, my personal knowledge of CAR, is they're very instrumental in writing some of the legislation. And, since they are real estate oriented, they have our profession in mind. They protect the consumer. They don't put the consumer at risk, but they also don't come up with harebrained dialogues or language for laws that make no sense. There is some challenges that we're facing because the legislature and the DRE might be overreaching a little bit. The problem is that that may in fact happen. So we'll have to work through that. But anyway, you'll get a good idea of what that'll look like in 2 weeks. And it should go into effect not later than the end of the year. Somebody sent out a touring agreement. Looks like Zillow, or was it Zillow that put it out? And don't use that yet. In fact, I would recommend you don't use it at all. But if that is a legal form that could be useful, either CAR will come up with one, or I will with consulting with an attorney. There are some problems with that form. That form, of course, is a national form that Zillow is using and may not conform to state regulations. I see a couple little problems with it. I'm not 100% certain, so I'll study that. I just want to comment, don't use that yet. And we will have a class on how to present the buyer representation agreement. Mike is going to do a class on the end of the month, on the 29th, and that's going to be on the buyer presentation. And you won't want to miss that. Mike is got a very strong, successful track record in not only running a company and owning a company, but in real estate sales. So we're going to be, you're all going to be very fortunate to get some of Mike's insight and wisdom on how to sell your services to buyers. We're pretty good at listing presentations. Buyer presentations are kind of new to us. So that's scheduled for the 29th. And then in June, we've got a few more classes scheduled. Don't hesitate to email me with questions or concerns. That'll have an impact on the kinds of classes we present. If we're getting the same kinds of questions from more than a few of you, we'll want to cover, schedule something to cover that. So I think I'm done. Any comments?
Well, I have something I wanted to ask you about. I went to one of those Career Compass seminars to renew my license last week.
Mhm.
Brian and Barb were there. And he was saying that it's not lawful to force a buyer to sign a contract to do this. So is the state saying,
Well, he's wrong. He's wrong
okay.
because it can be lawful if they pass a law.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if it is a state law,
where they're mistaken, I've heard this before, and if I can address it sort of simply, where they're mistaken is they're not saying you have to sign a contract to buy a house. They're not saying that. Buyer can buy a house. They're saying the industry that they regulate. They're not saying the buyer has to sign the contract. See, that's where what's his name, Beef Wellington, if he's the one saying it. Yeah, that's where he is. He's an okay guy. He's put some stuff out there I don't agree with. He means well, and some of the material is pretty good. What he's missing is the state can regulate a real estate agent every way to Sunday, right? So they are going to tell real estate agents, you cannot represent a buyer unless you have a buyer representation agreement. See, right now, we can represent buyers. Not half, every RPA has. Who represents a buyer? Walt Klein. Brenda Dots, do you have a buyer broker agreement? No, but you can still represent them. The law is going to say, no, Brenda, if you're going to represent a buyer, you have to buy back agreement. Here's an interesting concept. State law requires a surgeon to have a patient's consent before they operate on them. That's a law. They cannot operate on me without me saying it's okay to operate on me. Of course, they want that anyway. They get sued, if they didn't. See, so the law isn't buyers have to sign it. The law is real estate agents have to sign it. See, the NAR settlement isn't the buyers have to do this. It's you're a NAR member, you have to do this. And CAR, thank goodness, that's why I'm telling people don't throw the baby out yet. I mean, with the bathwater, CAR and NAR still have quite a bit of value. By the way, I think 70% of NAR members still think that NAR has value. Of course, the bad news is 30% think no, but 70 do. Well, CAR is saying, look, we're going to be required to use these forms. But what about the mom and pop around the corner, not a NAR member? See, so, they appealed to what the state's already prone to believe, and that is, yeah, we should have these. We should require agents to do this. Yeah. And let's do it right away because we're going to have to do it if we're a NAR member. Let's have everybody do it. See, so I hope I answered that question, but yeah,
You
that
did.
law, it could be
Thank you.
required. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. He said
Yeah.
it several times. Thanks, Walt.
Yeah. That's kind of funny. People say that, well, you can't do that. Well, yeah, you can. He's doing it right now. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right. Well, listen, I want to thank all of you for being here. I hope you got some value out of it. Let me know. Appreciate, your comments. Got any constructive criticism? I'm happy to hear about that as well. And let me know, more importantly, I guess, what challenges you're facing, what your concerns are, because Mike and I, we obviously we talk frequently, almost daily, but one of the things we talk about is what are we doing to help our agents, equip our agents to succeed in this marketplace? And again, Mike, stepping up and let me do the buyer presentation class, Walt. I think that's a class I can do, and I'm thrilled to do it. We're going to do lots of classes to make sure you guys are well equipped.
Thanks, Walt.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
have
Walt.
a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Walt.
Go
Bye.
Celtics.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Walt.